Jumanji is one of those movies where, watching it, I can see why it's considered a classic, but it's never fully appealed to me personally. I like it, and as far as family adventure movies go, it's fine enough, but it's also pretty flawed and never amounts to anything more than just a fun distraction. The characters are pretty bland, a lot of the things that the movie sets up as arcs for them aren't really built upon or concluded in any satisfying way, and the action scenes that make up a lot of the appeal of the movie are good, but not especially creative or amazing. But clearly it at least had something going for it, because several years later we got a semi-original, semi-sequel movie that borrows a lot of story elements.
Welcome to the jungle. We got fun and games.
No, not that one. I'm talking about the first sequel released in 2005, Zathura, a space adventure. Based on the picture book Zathura, which in turn was a sequel to the original Jumanji book by Chris Van Allsburg. Yes, Jumanji is one of those adaptations that got very famous despite the fact that nobody ever talks about the source material. Basically half of DreamWorks' filmography. Zathura follows the same basic concept of Jumanji. Some kids find a magic board game where imaginary threats from the game come to life, and they have to team up with an adult who's been trapped in the game since childhood to put everything back to normal. Jumanji in space, essentially. Oh, and also, it's kind of just a better movie. One of my main issues with Jumanji was that a lot of the threats the characters faced weren't particularly interesting. It was mostly just generic jungle fodder like stampedes, bats, lions, bad CGI monkeys. A few threats seem vaguely interesting, like man-eating plants and giant insects, but it's rare that the film's action scenes do anything all that funny or exciting. The part at the end where the house gets overrun with plants and starts tearing apart is exciting, but for the most part, you don't get much in the way of creative problem solving from the characters, which would make these scenes more unpredictable and engaging. In Zathura, the action scenes are almost inherently a bit more creative because it's science fiction, so a lot more has to be thought up from scratch. We get some fun concepts like meteor showers, giant robots, spaceships, gravity shifting, characters getting cryogenically frozen. There's a much greater variety of situations these characters have to face, not to mention the threats feel much more imposing and larger than life. It's also helped by the fact that the characters are actually trapped in the world of the game as opposed to aspects of the game being drip-fed to them. Not just because it's more visually interesting, showcasing just how out of the depth the characters are by contrasting the domestic suburban house with the vastness of space right outside their door, but it also ups the stakes from the original film where it was instead just some jungle hijinks in the real world, to the point where the game managed to be active for 26 years with barely anyone in the town even noticing. The movie was directed by Jon Favreau, who, if I can go on a quick tangent here, I think has been getting a bad rap for the last few years. Yes, the Lion King remake was a terrible movie, and you're free to criticize him for that. But I see people using that one movie alone to claim that he's a bad filmmaker, and I just want to say to these people, he does other things. Elf, Iron Man, hell, the very same year The Lion King came out, he also released The Mandalorian. And sure, he directed one of Disney's worst remakes, which is saying something, but don't forget that the reason he got that job in the first place was because he previously directed one of the best. Not everything Favreau has made has been an all-time classic, but the guy has talent and most of the time it pays off. A fact that is very much on display in Zathura because the movie has a pretty strong sense of energy and comedic timing. Another way the movie outshines the original is with the characters. Like I said, the characters in Jumanji don't have much in the way of personality or chemistry, which is a shame because they have interesting traits that the movie never really does anything with. I admit I'm not the most familiar with Robin Williams' body of work. I've seen Aladdin and that's about it. But my understanding is that he was a very talented comedic actor with a lot of range. I don't really get a ton of that from him here though. His character, Alan Parrish, just kind of spends a lot of the movie being restrained and grumpy. It's especially disappointing considering I think there is potential here with a character who's simultaneously this intense badass survivor, but also hasn't socially matured since he was a child. His relationship with his father is pretty underdeveloped, with the argument over whether he should attend boarding school initially driving a severe wedge between them.
And I don't want to hear another word about it!
You won't! I'm never talking to you again!
But at the end of the movie, the problem kinda just solves itself. I mean, sure, Alan realizes that his father loved him and through some time travel shenanigans gets to reunite with him, But his father, who, from his own perspective, was insisting Alan go to boarding school, mere seconds later concludes with,
"You don't have to go to Cliffside if you don't want to."
Judy is played up early on as a mischievous troublemaker, and Peter is shown to be reeling from the death of their parents, but none of this ever goes anywhere or works its way into the plot at all. Zathura is an improvement in this regard since, while none of the characters are especially deep, they actually do have a fair amount of personality. The plot focuses on two brothers, Walter and Danny, who are constantly butting heads in classic sibling rivalry fashion. I don't have siblings, but I assume this is how it works. It also makes for a much more compelling story since we actually get to see some conflict between the main characters, and watching these two kids squabbling with each other, but also working together to save themselves is pretty entertaining to watch. Sadly, the movie still has its flaws in the storytelling department. The movie tries to root a lot of the rockiness between Walter and Danny as being because their parents got divorced.
This is all your fault. Everything's your fault. It's your fault Mom and Dad got divorced.
Hey!
But the movie doesn't really do much to explore the impact the divorces actually had on the two of them. They both seem to be on good terms with their dad. We never even see the mother, and we don't see any of the emotional toll that it takes on them to have their family split apart or stuck alternating between two different homes. We just get told that they're upset about it, and it's like, yeah, I suppose they probably would be. It makes it so that while the bickering between them is entertaining to watch for the most part, the actual redemption between them leaves a lot to be desired since it's based around a dilemma that we don't really get to properly see. There are a couple of other characters, and they're fine, basically. There's an astronaut character who essentially serves the same function as Alan from the original. He's an adult who got trapped inside the game as a kid and is now an expert on it, guiding the kids along their way. He's like Alan in that he serves his purpose, but doesn't add a ton to the movie in his own right. They try to give him a bit of a backstory, which, if you want to avoid spoilers, skip to this time code.
I'll be right back!
He's Walter from the future. It's not exactly a twist that's hidden very subtly. He says that he arrived via time warp, and he also has the same game card that Walter does.
Well, I'm Fleet Admiral, and I'm telling you to hit the road.
I'm a Fleet Admiral too!
Gee, I wonder where they're going with this, considering him having that card doesn't seem to have any actual functional role within the story. It is pretty neat, though, that his card looks older and more worn out. That's actually really good attention to detail. Kristen Stewart is in the movie as Walter and Danny's older sister, but she's just kind of a throwaway character. She spends the first act of the movie asleep, most of the second act frozen, and in the last third where she finally gets involved in the action, she isn't given a whole lot to do except following the other characters around and getting the hots for her brother.
Oh my god!
Side note, I know her introductory scene is her father telling her to get out of bed, but what parent allows their child to sleep in until 2 p.m. in the first place?
It's 2.
I'm starting to think that divorce may not have been entirely unjustified. But even with those problems in mind, Zathura is an improvement over Jumanji in a number of ways. The character interactions have a bit more depth, the fantasy elements are expanded on a lot more, and it's overall a lot more entertaining. It's still not a masterpiece by any stretch, but if you're like me and you thought that the original Jumanji was a little too underdeveloped, well, my first recommendation would be to watch Jumanji: Welcome to the Jungle. As far as this franchise goes, it's the funniest, makes the most creative use of the concept, and each of the characters get fully developed arcs that make it the best movie in the series in my opinion. Quite honestly, it's probably Dwayne Johnson's last really good movie. Although, the Smashing Machine does look pretty promising. Fighting with My Family was pretty good too, although I wouldn't exactly call that his movie, although the poster would agree with me. But Zathura is still worth giving a watch. It's not worthy of being considered an all-time classic, but it deserves more attention than what it typically seems to get. Special thanks to my Patreon supporters Heather Reed, Zelda, Moon Goddesses, The Hen Rolled, Seth M, Chris Spicer, Jacob K, Wasp Sen, and Andrew Taylor. Thank you so much for the support. If you'd like to see your name in the credits, along with early access to scripts and videos, as well as exclusive unused video thumbnails, or if you'd just like to chat with me, consider supporting me on Patreon for just $1.50 a month. The link is in the description.